Hi, my name is Garen Daly, and welcome to another Boston Sci-Fi podcast. Today is Essential 70s Movies. And as you can tell from our intro banner, hopefully the music sounded 70s, but we have a lot of 70s movies that we're going to talk about, but we're not going to talk about some of the big ones. We're going to talk about essentials. So, we're not going to talk Star Wars because everyone's talked about Star Wars. We're not going to talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind because those seem to get a lot of traction to begin with. And joining me on this journey today in our Wayback Machine is Hope Madden and David Giancola. Welcome, guys. How are we doing?
Good.
Great, Garen. Very glad to be here.
So, Hope, did you grow up in the 70s? You're not that old, are you?
I was born in the end of 1970. So sure, I didn't, I was little, but I remember a lot of these. And then, I have revisited all of these, some of them many, many, many times over the years. I think Alien I have maybe seen more than almost any other movie, more often than almost any other movie.
And did they warp you?
Oh, I don't think the sci-fi
Come on, you're totally warped.
horror movies of the 70s definitely me. Yes.
But, well, I mean, that's one of the things we can talk about because, again, when you look at Alien, and we'll get into this later on because Alien is one of those, it is a sci-fi film, but it also is one of those sci-fi films that crosses into the horror genre quite nicely.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
I think it sets something up. Now, David, did you grow up in the 70s?
Yeah, Garen. It's really interesting. I was born in 1969. So when all those movies that you're talking about, Alien, I think was 79, Star Wars 77, Close Encounters 78-ish, I was about 15. And I don't know if I would be a filmmaker if I grew up in a different decade because there were so many great movies. I can remember being a kid and it was not even a big theater. We had like a small like a twoplex. And I would go in there as a little kid and just be blown through the back of the theater because there were so many great movies in that late 70s period when I was like old enough to go see those movies. And I think it damaged me permanently. And that's why I'm a filmmaker.
For me, I was in my 20s and I had just moved to Boston to run a couple of movie theaters. So I was part of the business and we were constantly trying to figure out what was going on, what was the next hit, and it was very exciting. I mean, it was really exciting because it wasn't the same old. And I think that's one of the important pieces to remember about the 70s. We are out of the 60s. And after the first couple of years in the 70s, we're no longer in the Vietnam War, but there's still a lot of turmoil. There's race issues, there's gender issues, there's climate issues. All the issues that we're facing today were back in the 70s. And at the same time, we see the destruction or the final demise of the studio system. So you start seeing emerging new directors, new ideas, and new technology. Mm-hmm. And our first film that we want to talk about is called Colossus, the Forbin Project, which is in 1970. And for me, that is one of the essential films of the 70s for a variety of reasons. But let's take a close look at a clip here and we can come back and talk about it on the other side.
Do you understand the meaning of the word privacy? Yes. Well, I need a certain amount of privacy to maintain my sanity. Privacy in the elimination of my bodily waste, for example. Privacy in sleep. Privacy in something that you don't understand, my emotional life. My love life. My sex life, then. Every night. Four times a week.
Maybe it's because I'm in my 70s now, but I think that is a bit much. Maybe you're being a little optimistic there.
Garen, I couldn't hear that. Maybe that was AI cutting you out. You want to say how many times you want to have sex a week again, Garen? I didn't hear it. Did you hear it, Hope?
It was a little fuzzy. It was.
Garen.
Well, but the reality is that's 1970, and you take away the fact that it's a very clunky computer talking in a typewriter thing, and you just look at it, a computer taking over our privacy and taking over everything else. That's happening now, and so it's very prescient. So, is Colossus, the Forbin project, the precursor for an AI world? What do you think? No?
Well, Hope's gonna have to answer this because I was 2 when the movie came out. She didn't exist when so Garen, I want to say this is one of those movies I haven't seen. I know Joseph Sargent is director, but I have never seen this movie. I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. That computer seems a whole lot.
Do you know what the plot is?
No, I don't. No, please tell me.
Okay, so let me explain to you the plot.
Okay.
So that guy that you saw there, that's Eric Braden, I think his name is.
Okay.
He is a scientist who's created a computer. And the computer is sort of an AI computer, and it is meant to defend the U.S. against any attack or anything like that. Well, the computer reaches out into the computer world and discovers there's a Russian version of it. And so the two of them combine together and become one entity and take over everything. And because Braden is the Colossus, Dr. Forbin is the creator of it, the computer wants to keep him around because he is the father, the creator. But he's creating everything, controlling everything else.
And the creator just wants to masturbate 4 times a week.
Well, it's being of that decade, it has to include some sort of a romantic angle. So there's another scientist who comes by 4 times a week to smuggle in information, but pretend that they fall in love and they do have sex. So I had not seen the film either, Garen, but I watched it in the interim. And, I think that there's a lot about it that is prescient. What I found funny is that it is so of its time. No one ever gets angry. So when when the one computer just sends missiles to blow up part of Moscow, and then the Moscow computer sends missiles to blow up part of Texas. This is all just to get all of the human population in line to understand who's boss. Nobody even gets angry. They're all like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess that has happened then." And it's everybody is so incredibly polite the whole time. And the thing that I thought was very funny, which I love the clip you chose, because Forbin, right? Victor Newman from soap operas, Victor Newman. As I kept saying that in my head the whole time. Every time anybody would call him Dr. Forbin, I would say Victor Newman. Anyway, he chuckles along like it's his child. Like, I'm sort of impressed that you asked me the difference between require and need. And I thought that was an interesting approach to sort of the Dr. Frankenstein in this film, is that he never comes across as being an egomaniac in any way, but he does seem like he's not proud of himself. He's proud of like his offspring. He does come off as like a father figure in this film.
Yeah. And again, we have to remember, this is 1970. Mm-hmm. Computers were not that big. I mean, we had I think we had the UNIVAC and the NVAC back then, but that was about it. And to be able to extend and stretch that out is exactly what science fiction is very good at. And, we see those similar themes running through many, many other films over the next 50 years.
Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting that in popular culture, you find sci-fi in things we want. So you're talking about way back then, the computers were huge and whatever, but you also had Dick Tracy with the little phone, right? So someone was always thinking about miniaturization, and that's always that sci-fi is in the thread of everything, whether it's a comic book or whatever. You find that humans, interestingly, kind of create what they always craved. It's weird that we have the ability to do that. I find it interesting.
Well, the other thing that I like about this film is that, again, it's 1970. Joseph Sargent directed it. He also directed The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3,
Right.
which is a really good film unto itself. And then there's not much you hear from him. He does some TV shows and stuff like that.
He did Jaws 4, didn't he?
Jaws 3, I think it was.
The Revenge,
Really bad. It was a really bad movie.
It was 4, the worst of
Was
them.
it 4? Okay.
Four.
I
Yeah.
believe even Lorraine Gary at that point said, "Why would the shark swim all the way to Bermuda to attack me?"
But still, and it was a universal film.
Mhm.
But I think it was what is known as a negative pickup. Do you know what a negative pickup is?
I don't.
So back in the day when a lot of, especially in the 70s, people would make films that weren't aligned with a studio.
Mhm.
And then the studio would buy the rights to it, and they would buy the rights to the negative so
Okay.
that they had complete control over it rather than just a positive. So in the business, it was called a negative pickup. And that still exists today, but not in the same ways it was back then.
In my world in distribution, they called it a negative pickup. In my world as an independent filmmaker, because after you get paid for the negative, you ain't going to get paid again. Residuals, the answer is negative.
That's the downside to it. You're a filmmaker, you get screwed. That's what comes with it. But again, you're starting to see the emergence of people who are making films and then selling them to the studios because the studios don't have the wherewithal like they did in the factory days. So that, to me, Colossus is a great beginning.
Not to go too long on this, but I love the business of film. I'm actually friends with the Salkinds now. I think the younger son Ilya, and that was Superman the movie. The Christopher Reeve was a negative pickup from the Salkinds, who sold foreign rights, and they sold it to Warner Brothers. Very famous. They were very famous for that back in the day.
Right.
Way back in '78. Yeah.
But that changed how the business was, and as we know, come 77, we start getting the blockbusters,
right.
Which I think it's always great that they talk about the summer blockbusters, because the blockbuster concept was something that happened in the 40s, or in the 30s, where a film would come out and literally everyone in the block would be at the movie theaters, which is why they called it blockbusters.
I thought there was a late 70s, early 80s thing where it would be about the marketing and it'd be about.
Yes, but it is the transition from an earlier meaning of the film.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
cool.
Anyways, again, one of the things about the 70s is we have to start off with the progenitors of the science fiction films of the 70s, with the 260s blockbusters, again, 2001 and Planet of the Apes. We always have to keep them as the grandfathers. They really set the stage for that. And Planet of the Apes gave Charlton Heston all of the cred that he needed to do to be able to get into his entire secondary career of being in a lot of really good science fiction films, like our next one, which is Soylent Green. And here is a clip from Soylent Green.
On premise in 1 hour.
This conversation with Governor Henry C. Santini is brought to you by Soylent Red and Soylent Yellow, high-energy vegetable concentrates, and new delicious Soylent Green, the miracle food of high-energy plankton gathered from the oceans of the world. Because of its enormous popularity, Soylent Green is in short supply. Remember, Tuesday is Soylent Green Day. And now, Governor Santini.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon, be able to talk to the people of the city of New York.
Bullshit.
I love the way he says bullshit. Anyways, David, what was your first impression of Soylent Green?
Well, when I first saw Soylent Green, I remember I saw it on TV. First of all, Edward G. Robinson being in it, and he ends up becoming Soylent Green, if I remember correctly, for Edward G. Robinson, right? I thought it was a great movie, but I didn't really understand when I first saw this movie, I was very young and it was on cable and it was like a big HBO movie at the time. I didn't really get it, but now, of course, there's Soylent Green. It's been referenced in cartoons. It's been referenced everywhere, and it's a joke now.
Well, hold that thought there with it being a joke, because Mark, our director, found a clip to kind of show why Soylent Green is within all the zeitgeist out there. Here's a clip from Futurama.
My God, what if the secret ingredient is people?
No, there's already a soda like that. Soylent Cola.
Oh, how is it?
It varies from person to person.
I think we need a rim shot there.
But
anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted you there. Go right ahead.
I don't think we're that shocked that it's people. Hope you that shocked that it's people.
I was shocked back then, but these days, with corporate America being what it is, who knows?
I just hope that they cooked it properly. That's really. Nothing. Go ahead.
I was an adult actually when I saw this film for the first time. It was a long time ago, but I was fully aware of kind of the plot line, and all of the, Soylent Green is people and everything. And honestly, I was surprised by what a good movie it was. I expected it to be like a campy, I didn't realize it was going to be, and it's incredibly well made.
Well, it's Richard Fleischer.
Yeah, the scenes depicting sort of the classism and everything are really moving. They're very powerful. And I liked it as a film way better than I expected it to.
Yeah, and I think I lived during those periods, and so the concerns of overpopulation and climate change or global warming, whatever it was called back then, were very, very real and very much on topic. And and in some ways, that fear of what we were doing to the planet, really was part of my generation back then. We were really concerned about it. Unfortunately, not enough people did anything about it, because now we're getting things where we're getting once in 1,000-year rainstorms 4 times a week. Mm-hmm. And people are not even saying, well, who are all these climate deniers who are, who've made this happen, and we're not holding them accountable.
Garen, I think the problem with Soylent Green, and maybe I'm concerned about this, is that I responded to this movie, even as a young kid, with a lot of cynicism. And I'm talking about with a lot of cynicism. And, if you tried to remake Soylent Green now and its food and its people, I don't know that, I think you would need to come up with a more fantastic, larger kind of James Bond premise to scare people, because we're so scared now. People being discs, who cares?
Well,
right? Crazy.
That's a conversation we can have at some point, and I think it's a really good conversation.
Yeah.
The problem that films and stories have to tell is that it's scarier in the real world than it is inside the theater.
Yes.
Yeah. When it's just. I am convinced right now that I'm living in a dystopia, and I don't think I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with you at all. I don't think you're living in a dystopia. I think you just don't like the way things are going because you're old, and that's the way it is. Young people come.
Oh, really? You
yes, Garen, really.
That's an ageist thing for you to say, David Giancola.
I'm old, Garen, and we're on a podcast.
Just because I'm in my 70s, you can't go around saying you're a grump because you're old.
I think that a lot of the challenges we're facing now are different than the challenges you were facing in the 70s. And I think it's super important to understand there's a distinction between that. And Garen, you're not going to fix the problems that we're facing now.
No,
the next generation, if they're smart enough, going to have to fix it.
To me is the cynicism of it all, because I don't think we're going to fix it. I think we will survive, but I don't think we will survive as we think we're going to survive. Humanity is always very clever, and I think we will end up coming into something. But, what I'm seeing right now is really disturbing.
Do you know what I think has happened in film is that I think in the early 70s, it was a shocking idea that when there was an ecological collapse, people would turn to cannibalism. It is an absolute given now that after an environmental collapse, people will turn to cannibalism. 40 Acres is out right now with Daniel Delguido. It's a great siege horror thriller. It's great, but it's 100% accepted. If they get in, they're going to eat us. Like 100%. That's just assumed. And I think that is what makes Soylent Green seem a little bit quaint. What I think that they do that's smart is that they make it capitalism. right? They're like, well, if we're going to eat people, we might as well turn a dime out of it. So that's where I think the film is very wise, is that it roots all of the evils of the world in capitalism. And to a degree, the way that you treat the women as furniture, patriarchy. And I think clearly those are the two problems that will kill all of us.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
Hope Madden for president 2020. What is it?
Well, at least she's not president. I mean, we can get into idiocracy. That came out later. But
We did that podcast.
President Camacho and the orange trumpeter, are very similar to me. But one of the things that our next film brought to me is, and I think to me it is the essential 70s movie, is Alien. And I say that for a variety of reasons. One is it's Ridley Scott. It's incredibly well done, but it essentially is people trapped in a haunted house. And it's really upgraded, and the special effects are really good. And that's the thing that you start seeing, the emergence of special effects as a way of driving the story more and more and more, and that people want to go and see those special effects. So it becomes a departure from some of the other films, even the great 60s, Poe classics that Corman did and stuff like that. They were good, but now it comes to a whole different level. And here's a clip of that, Alien from 1979.
We're clean. Let us in.
What happened to Kane?
Something has attached itself to him. We have to get him to the infirmary right away.
What kind of thing? I need a clear definition.
An organism. Open the hatch.
Wait a minute. If we let it in, the ship could be infected. You know the quarantine procedure.
24 hours for decontamination.
It could die in 24 hours. Open the hatch.
Listen to me. If we break quarantine, we could all die.
Look, would you open the goddamn hatch? We have to get him inside.
No.
I can't do that, and if you were in my position, you'd do the same.
Ripley, this is an order. Open that hatch right now. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Ripley, this is an order. You hear me?
Yes. I read you. The answer is negative.
And the hatch open.
My God.
So we talked about 1970 and Colossus, the Foreman Project, and the computer being an AI. Literally 9 years later, we're in space with synthetic life forms and an alien that looks really, really cool. We've gone from a bit of clunkiness to something that's really smooth and I think it's Geiger-like. It's amazing. It's amazing. Hope, did it shock the shit out of you when you saw that film the first time?
Oh my God, yes. Oh my Lord, yes, it did.
And you say that it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, it was the greatest. It was absolutely the greatest. And I love that scene because, I mean, for a million reasons, but it's such amazing foreshadowing because, Ash, as a science officer, he would never have done that as a dude. Like as the science officer, he would be the one of all of them to go, yeah, no way we're letting that organism in here. No, you've done the right thing in keeping this hatch closed, but that's not what he's there for. And, I'm not saying the first time I saw this movie, I thought to myself, no way the science officer lets that guy in. I didn't. I was like, what's on his face? But it's a brilliant piece of foreshadowing. It's just everything about this movie is so incredibly well made, so perfectly put together.
Yeah, it is. And one piece that I just realized as we were watching that scene is Sigourney Weaver is being smart and savvy, and they're ignoring her because she's a woman. If it was a guy there, if it was Charlton Heston saying, no, you can't come in, I get the feeling they wouldn't be coming in.
I don't know. I mean, I have the feeling that the other people who are locked out with this thing were going to still bitch that they couldn't come in. I do. But I do think that there was a power move that they took advantage of properly for the tension in the film. But I kind of think that, they're not going to be like, yeah, okay, we're stuck out here with this thing on his face. Okay, that's cool. They probably would have, out of desperation, tried to get in anyway.
So David, do you like the arc that I'm taking from 1970 to 1979, the 9 years, and the difference of two science fiction films with sort of similar ideas?
Yes. And I will tell you, I was so scared of Alien. A friend even brought over like a Super 8 digest back in the 70s, and I wouldn't watch that. Like a Super 8 digest in the house, because Alien was scary when I was a kid. It was like, Star Wars is good, all your little popcorn movies, but Alien was like, I don't know. And it's interesting, I only really watched Alien properly when I was older because it kind of had this rep. But as I watch that now, and I just watched it recently, what's interesting, I think, is the pace of that movie. If you sit down and kind of step back and look at the editing and the writing and everything else, the movie's really relentless. It has this big set piece that you're all talking about, and Hope's exactly right. Is she going to let him? Is she not going to let him? This could go on for 20 minutes in any movie. But at some point, boom, the robot, and you don't know he's a robot at that point, just lets him in, and it just leaves you uncomfortable, and then bang, they're cutting it off his face. So you have a whole new reason to be super uncomfortable. You haven't reconciled how you felt about the first scene. Then something weird happened. Now they're cutting it. That movie's relentless in terms of its editing, and you could probably, I'm guessing, I was not on the production, but you probably could edit that a million different ways. But it's like scary on scary on scary. I don't want to see what's in that mask. I wanted to know if they were going to get in, and now we're doing this. It's why it's a brilliant movie.
So that keeps you a little on the imbalance.
Like, it doesn't sit, that movie rarely sits too long to rest on its laurels before it dives into another. Oh, suddenly she's got nothing on but underwear, and she's got one gun, and it's her and the alien at the end of the movie. And it's like, I mean, it's why Sigourney Weaver was considered one of the first female sci-fi action stars.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
She's wonderful. She is wonderful in it. I've also believed that Alien was a film, and I think we may have touched about this earlier, or Braver was in pre-show, but Alien is that film that takes us to a new level. Mm-hmm. It takes us to a level where, first of all, horror and science fiction are merged together in a way that it really hadn't been done. I mean, Frankenstein is a horror film, science film, but this is done in a different way. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that I liked about it was it also showed a lot of the characters as being kind of untrustworthy. The science officer is untrustworthy. And we had just come out of the Watergate thing back in 72, 73. So we don't trust anybody.
Right.
And I think this is one of those films that really starts to show that there is a reason why we don't start.
And I think, Aaron, to take the Watergate paranoia a little further, this is a monster movie where the problem is we're letting the monster in. It's usually a haunted house movie. You got to get the monster out. We got to leave the house. This is, we let it in, which means it's our fault, which has a lot to do with that 70s, what would you call it? Upset. Everyone's up, everyone just feels terrible because, so much bad has happened in our country. I mean,
do you know what else I love about it that strikes me as very 70s is that it is the opposite in look of any other like sci-fi movie we were used to. It is like just a garbage dump, this place, this thing that they're in. And they all seem unkempt. Nobody is tidy. It's not 2001. It's not even Star Trek. It's just like, and I think it goes along with, especially like the indie films of the 70s, this sort of gruffy everyman, sort of characters that we were getting as opposed to your, chiseled jawed, handsome marquee idols. We were seeing these kind of schlubs that were carrying films in the 70s. And now we just turn them all into, like you said, unreliable sort of jackasses. And how did they get this job in this ship? And no wonder they're making such bad decisions. And it's scarier because you're like, I'm not sure that there's one smart person there's no Captain Kirk here. Nobody's going to get us out of this danger, but also, this movie owes a lot to Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires. I just need to get that out. Just need to get that out my mouth before we give it too much credit. It's a million times better, but Bava did kind of plant some seeds.
Well, I think, again, we're talking, and we'll talk a little bit later, especially when we talk about Mad Max and foreign films coming in and starting to influence American films. But I felt you were really right when you started talking about the grunginess of it all. Yeah. Because if you take a look at Star Wars, which was just 2 years earlier, okay, everything is very white.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very, very, very white and very kind of clean. No one has anything under their fingernails. You know, it's all they all seem manicured. And this is not that at all. Not at all.
Star Wars was known to defend Star Wars, and you know we keep avoiding Star Wars and Close Encounters because they're such huge hits. Star Wars was the first movie to introduce the used universe. Not to, I don't know, you know, I know we did it before. Silent Running kind of did it, but Star Wars in a mainstream way really did that.
Yeah. And I loved it for it. And believe me, I saw it like 14 times in a row.
Oh, yeah. That's the first movie I saw in a theater. Star Wars was.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Especially when you got the opening sequence with the starship coming across, going on and going on and going on.
Oh, and talk about being ruined. Being ruined. That's the first experience I had in the theater. And then after that, everything was like, why is this not Star Wars? Like, what are we doing with this nonsense?
I tell it's so great, Hope. I got to tell my story. So my first movie was No Deposit, No Return with Darren McGavin and Don Knotts, which I'm not making that. So that was my first movie, and that was like not an experience. And my second movie was Star Wars, and yeah, I was ruined too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a film that I saw 3 times in a row, and I was sitting in the second row, and I was just going, oh. I loved it.
It was fun, and it was guileless, and there was a lot about it. You know, you're right to say, hey, you know, it's cleared. Star Wars has cleared a lot of the discussion away from other really great science fiction films. So I don't want to go any further on, but I think we need to give it its due because Hope and I are young enough to really remember.
Just for me, I hate seeing Star Wars: A New Hope. To me, it's just Star Wars.
I agree with you.
And everything breaks out from there. Anyways, our next film kind of blends in with this, and that is probably one of the best remakes of all time. Because again, when we're looking at great alien invasion movies, we started off with Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the 50s and all of that great stuff. But the Philip Kaufman version in 1978 took everyone by surprise by kind of flipping a little switches inside it. Here is a clip from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978, directed by Philip Kaufman.
Did I ever tell you the one about the English Camel Corps? Did I?
Mm-mm.
They're trapped in the desert, in the Sahara Desert. They've been surrounded by Rommel for 40 days, and they've run out of food. And the captain comes and makes an announcement to the men. And he says, "Men, I have some good news for you and some bad news for you." And one of the men says,
Oh, wait, you have told me this one.
"Oh." Can I tell it to you again?
Oh my God! Oh my God! Lock the door! Lock the door!
They're coming! They're coming! Help! Help! They're coming! They're coming! Listen to me! Listen! Help me! You're next, please! Please! You're next! They're in danger! Please, listen to me! Something terrible! Please! You're next! Here they are! They're already here! Come! You're next! They're coming! They're coming!
Must have done something.
All right, Hope. Give me a take on that.
First of all, you guys pick great clips. That's such a great clip to choose. And it's not one that I think people pick very often. But as soon as he says, okay, can I tell it to you again? And then we see the end of the 50s movie come right at us. Like, here's, I'm going to tell you this whole story all over again, but it's going to be just amazing. This is one, I mean, I'm a big fan of the original, but this is one of the few remakes that I think is better than the original movie.
Well, I tell you, the other thing I like is that the writing is good.
Yeah.
Because what they did in that opening little sequence of telling the story about the Africa Corps is, you know, they start telling it, then they go, oh yeah, I remember. So the audience doesn't know what the story is. And so it kind of like brings them in, well, wait, what's going on with this story? And then you get another thing going on. So there's 2 stories going on there at once, and that's good writing. That's good writing because you're engaged. You know, David, what did you think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Well, I just want to say that, again, another movie that I didn't catch in the theaters. I was probably too young. I remember watching it at home, maybe alone or whatever, and that last scene in that movie where you kind of at some point think that Donald Sutherland is somebody you can emotionally kind of cling to at some point, and then at the end, which is of course what's in all the trailers. brilliant ending to that movie where you expected it to be a happy ending, or at least if you were young like me, you expect it to be a happy ending. But I think Phil Kaufman is a director, and he did The Unbearable Lightness of Being for it. I think he won an Academy Award for that. I can't remember.
He also did Right Stuff too.
Yeah, and he really underrated director, I think. So if you watch that scene, and I do that now when I watch these scenes, it's like I know they shot overs on both actors because you can see them for quickly, but they stay on that smash window and these silhouettes talking, and then they drop the story, and then shit. And you never, and I'm just saying that, like, if you want to tell somebody how to direct a movie, say, well, guess what? You could have shot this 9 million ways, but Kaufman put it back here, stayed back here, stayed on the smash, and picked up. I mean, that's movie making.
Yeah.
You know, and when people ask me, like, it's that choice, and that movie is so full of great choices. So,
well, and I'll go back to what you were saying about previously, is that you feel a little unbalanced while you're watching that. And when you feel unbalanced, it builds a kind of tension for it. I went to Telluride one year, and we had Siegel was there, and they were talking about the original.
Don Siegel? Don Siegel?
Yeah, and the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and the prevailing theory is that it was all about being a communist, and how the communist takes your souls and stuff like that. And Siegel goes, it's not that. There are just pods out there. There are people who are pods, and that's all it's about. There's nothing more than that. Is Invasion of the Body Snatchers 2 about pods, or is it about something else, about the individuality of people losing their emotional side of humanity? Because that is something that we grapple with. Who's human, who's not?
I think they're all about conformity, because this has been, the Faculty from the early 2000s, the horror film, they're all the same story. And I think this one being, I think in the 70s, I think was a little bit more maybe about sort of the apathy of the general public, but they're not really any different than zombie films, right? Whereas the zombie always represents something we think just wake up, right? Stop doing that. So maybe it's consumerism, right? Or maybe it's anything. It's some sort of mass just conformity that is running. People who are like believe themselves as they're thinking differently is going to ruin us all. If we all keep just thinking this way and not doing anything, not thinking for ourselves, society is in danger. So it's very similar to any zombie film, I think.
Well, the only problem with that, with your analogy, is, and I agree with a lot of it. The difference is that zombies will eat you, no matter who they are. Your mother will eat your brains out if she has a chance, because she's hungry for brains. And I'm not quite sure that these alien invaders have that same thing. And that to me always was the difference with zombies. You could be like being emotionally attached to somebody, and all of a sudden they just want to eat your brains because
Garen, I don't understand that. That makes no sense. What are you talking about? So you'd rather have your brains eaten than be put into I don't know, some person telling you need to join the cult? You'd rather have your
I'm just coming because I think it's more about cult rather than zombie.
So you'd rather join the cult than have your brains eaten?
The result
it really depends on how many times I'm getting sex.
I think the result is the same, which is you give in and you are not yourself anymore. Right?
That's true. That's true.
I think he's fine.
Well, anyways, if you haven't seen it, folks, definitely see Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's a great movie.
Really, really good. And Veronica Cartwright in it. And Brooke Adams, whatever happened to Brooke Adams,
And by the way, Veronica Cartwright, too. What a great actress.
It's so many great things. And I think, Mo said before, she's one of the great scream queens.
Yeah.
And she's not one of those busty ones. She's just kind of a nerdy
screamer.
Yeah. So she's just wonderful like that. We got a bunch of honorable mentions that Mark put together, our director, and we're going to play them, and we can talk a little bit about them on the flip side. But here are our honorable mentions for essential 70s films. And again, this is a short list. We can't include everything that we think we should. So a little true confessions here before we dive into that. Mark included the nose scene from the Sleeper there with the gun things, because I just had some surgery done on my nose, and when we were in pre-production last week, I had this big bandage on my nose. It's his way of poking a little fun at me. But even Sleeper. I mean, back before Woody Allen went south with his craziness. Sleeper was a wonderful comedy about all the science fiction stuff.
That's Race 2000. That's Paul Bartel, right?
Paul Bartel, correct? Yes.
Nurses all jumping up. I mean,
it was that. I mean, again, I don't know if kids still do it, but back when we were in the 60s and 70s, we would talk about how many points you would get for hitting somebody in your car. Yeah. And that's just an expansion of that idea where there's a death race, and the more people you kill, the more points you get, and the more points you get, the better you're going to win. And of course, there's Carradine in it. Sylvester Stallone is in it, an early movie, early film. And it's classic Corman, cheap, funny, irreverent, and probably brought in way under budget.
Oh, I'm sure, and also based on a really fantastic short story called The Racer, I believe.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I read it. I don't remember who wrote it, but I read it. I just read it recently, and it's short, but it's that whole thing. Like that short story is one of those ones. By the end of it, you feel bad that he didn't get more kills.
Yeah,
and it's just like for some people do that as a writer. It's fascinating. So that's why I think that movie's so.
But I mean, the other one that we should have probably done something better with is Clockwork Orange, because that is such a powerful film and a proto-punk film. I think that's what they're calling it now.
2001 was like 68, right? So it's not really 70s, 2008. 2001, excuse me.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
68? That wasn't 70.
It wasn't 70. No.
Oh. How did it get in there?
No. 2001, he's saying.
I was talking about Rick. Because I knew 2001 was so, I mean, for all those 70s movies, you can see that some of the set design in 2001 kind of just, for another decade, they're still recycling Kubrick's ideas.
Yeah. Clockwork Orange is my favorite Kubrick film, by a wide margin, my favorite Kubrick film, which is funny because I feel like, I'm not sure I think that he, as a filmmaker, properly interpreted the novel. But I think it still hits close enough. What I like about it, as opposed to some of the other films, is that it doesn't sort of, as a movie or as a book, decide. A lot is like, are we going to go with the sort of the authoritarian, or are we going to go with individuality? And Clockwork Orange says both suck. Neither is a good choice. And I love that in that movie. And I also love that coming out of the 70s. There's this fatalism about that movie that I think represents something from that decade really well.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I love that. And plus,
I do too.
One of the things about Clockwork Orange is it was one of the early adopters of Dolby Stereo in the theaters. And that was a big thing for theaters, to get Dolby Stereo to draw people in. And that, again, that's part of that technological thing. The next film we have, excuse me, the next film we have is the original Mad Max, directed by George Miller, 1979, Australian. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is, as you mentioned, Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires. The influence of other countries and their science fiction films were starting to permeate into Hollywood. And with Mad Max, I'm not sure this is the same version, but the original version of Mad Max that was released in the U.S. had Mel Gibson's voice dubbed because they thought it was too Australian and people wouldn't understand it. And he looked really, really good there. And I will tell you that, and on the other side of it, my first national quote was in USA Today when someone was asking me whether or not why people were going to go see Mad Max films or Mel Gibson films in the 70s. And after a very long conversation, I stupidly said, Mel looks great in leather, and that's the quote that they promoted in USA Today. But here is a quote. Here is a clip from Mad Max 1979, directed by George Miller.
Shut the gate on this one, Max. It's the duck's guts.
Yeah, she's the last of the V8. She sucks nitro. Face 4 head. Twin overhead cam. 600 horsepower through the wheel. With the blower.
With the blower.
Oh, she's meanness, but the music and the bitch is gone to life.
He's in a coma, man.
Who runs it?
Okay. How the hell did you get all this together?
Just happened, Max. You know, piece from here to piece from there.
So easy?
Yeah.
Come on, Max. You've seen it. You've heard it. And you're still asking questions. When do we go for a ride?
I think we've got him.
I hope so.
Yeah, we've got him.
Our top pursuit man wants to quit the road, and we have to seduce him with candy.
People don't believe in heroes anymore.
I know, McAfee. You want to give them back their heroes.
I always think of Mad Max as George Miller's homage to Beach Boys muscle cars in a post-apocalyptic world with lots of crashes, because it really is all about muscle cars and stuff like that. And but it was a film that kind of started breaking. It was an art house film at first, and people started picking up on it, and that's how these films came. Same thing with Planet of the Vampires. That was a drive-in / art film. There were people who were just big Mario Bava fans, and so we started to see that coming in. Were there any other films that you can think of that kind of like came from another country that started influencing American films in the 70s?
There were.
I mean, there was probably Alphaville or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of you know, I mean, like my area is so much more horror. And so, you know, Giallo was everywhere in the 70s. Like there was a lot of Italian horror films, and they were, you know, they were definitely art house at first and then got wider release over here. Bergman was, he obviously started off art house, and he's had massive influence on all of the filmmakers that came out of the 70s. So, but I think it was a big, honestly, Rocky Horror was an art house film, you know, and so I think that they had a much, for some reason, and I don't know what they are, much easier I think road to popularity from the art house in the 70s than they had in years past.
Well, I think there was a strong art house scene, and the art house people were. I mean, that was what I was doing back then, was looking for film that you could be able to bring in that was going to catch an audience. And particularly, like at the Orson Welles Cinema, we had The Harder They Come, which was a third world reggae music kind of thing that influenced and then ran for 9 years at the Orson Welles Cinema. So I think that's part of it. But we're going to close out, and I can't believe how long we're talking because I'm having such a good time. We're going to close off with Nicholas Meyer and Time After Time, which I think is a really underappreciated film. And we're going to take a clip where H.G. Wells and the Mad Slasher, played by Warner, are talking in a hotel room in modern day then San Francisco. Here's that clip.
Look. Palestine terrorists carried out their threat and began shooting the first 5 of 106 Israeli schoolchildren held hostage for 18 days in a sea.
You haven't gone forward, Herbert. You've gone back.
We've just received word that Mayor Griffin Margolin of Columbus, Ohio, was shot.
We don't belong here. On the contrary, Herbert.
CBS presents a special documentary.
I belong here completely and utterly. I'm home. It's you who do not belong here. You, with your absurd notions of a perfect and harmonious society, is drivel. The world has caught up with me and surpassed me. 90 years ago, I was a freak. Today, I'm an amateur.
Is that still true? I mean,
Well, Garen, I'm glad you waited and held this till the end so we can start the discussion. Because this is a great movie.
It's a great
it
line.
is a great movie.
That's a great line.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss here, Garen. And I will just start, and I know you guys are going to have a lot to say, which is I didn't think about this until just watching that again. So what Jack the Ripper, who is David Warner's character, is Jack the Ripper, correct?
Slash or whatever, yeah. I mean,
whatever. I believe my memory is he's Jack the Ripper. Is that?
Yeah, my memory is he was patterned after Jack. I'm not sure if he is actually Jack the Ripper, but he's a slasher.
So he's a sociopath.
He's a serial killer. He's a sociopath. Psychopath.
What it occurred to me when I was just watching that is that he's not reacting to the violence of modern times. He's reacting to the media's coverage of the immediacy of getting all this, because we can see it now. It's not that it didn't exist when he was around, but now it's shoved in our face right here. And I was thinking to myself, when I first looked at that, when I remember seeing the movie going, oh, yes, this is a great commentary. Now it's a commentary on what we're doing now, where people watch Facebook and think, oh, look, well, I'm right because they're feeding me this, so I must be right. I think we're all David Warner's character to a certain extent in that movie. And I'm ashamed.
Well, I also think I think the H.G. Wells character is the innocence of the 60s,
yes,
of the hippie movement. Because one of the things that growing up in that period, there was such hope that we would be able to, create something much more level-headed and better in our society. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happened was it was all idealism and no realistic political stuff. So it never came to pass. Right. And then what really came to pass was the people who were incompetent and the people we didn't like in high school became the goddamn leaders who took us down this really bad road. Yeah, I hate to say it, and I really hate to say it. It's all the people from my generation, and I hate them. That's me being a grumpy old guy.
You know what? I will tell you. I'm sorry, just real quickly before. I think you're absolutely right, and I think to that point, the one scene from that movie that I can remember like it was yesterday is when he goes into McDonald's and he's served French fries, bon free, right? I don't know why I can remember that. Sorry, Hope. Go.
Because it's a great joke.
Great scene, but
it's a great joke.
Yeah.
And it shows culture and stuff like that. No, I think it's Nicholas Meyer's best film, and
absolutely, he's a great director.
And it's really good. And I love the other thing that I love about this film is near the end when David Warner is in the time machine and H.G. Wells pulls the key out, mm-hmm. and they look at each other, and Warner is like, in my mind, assenting to the fact that he's going to go into nothingness. And that's where he wants to be, because that's where he'll find peace.
Where all your hated childhood enemies should go.
Yes. And there are some in my adult life that I think should go. Mostly politicians. But, anything else, Hope, on that?
I was just going to agree. I hadn't thought about what you said about H.G. Wells representing the innocence of the 60s. And not knowing enough apparently about the actual H.G. Wells, I kept thinking it was interesting that how many times he brought up certain things like free love and utopia. And I thought, how funny. Like I just was not. And now that you say that, I realize I think it was a specific dialogue between the innocence of the 60s and the violence of the 70s. And one of the things I find interesting about this is that I think that what Romero did in 68 was specifically talk about TV news coverage of Vietnam War and the Civil War and assassinations, and how we were so inundated with real life images of violence that he had to make Night of the Living Dead to represent that. And so this one is a bit more meta, where he's saying to his innocent friend, like, look where we are. This is where we are. Where all this violence is actually just entertainment now. So in a lot of ways, I think saying sort of the same thing.
Yeah. So is there anything we can take away from the 70s? I mean, I have my thought, but David, what do you think is, a look at essential 70s films? What is it that we can take away from it?
Garen, I don't want to get into politically what we can take, because that would be a whole nother 2 hours. But I can tell you, being a 56-year-old male on this planet, I grew up during the late 70s, and it was a great time for watching movies in theaters. And I'm so grateful as a human being that I was around for that, because I don't think the movies now are as good as they were in the 70s. I'm so sorry. I don't think the movies in the 90s were as good as, I don't think the movies of the 80s. I just think the 70s was this golden time. Maybe it's because I was young, but that's how I feel. I'm so grateful to have been around for it and see those movies in the theaters. And one of the movies we haven't talked about is Superman the movie, directed by Richard Donner. Really important movie for that time, and a lot of other movies like that.
Yeah, there are a lot of movies.
Great movies, and it was using the new technology, but it just seemed so young and fresh and wonderful. And I still watch these movies endlessly.
Hope?
I love a lot about films from the 70s, particularly the American independent films of the 70s. I think are breathtaking and, boundary pushing and visually stunning and out of the ordinary in a way that we certainly hadn't seen prior to the 1970s. And I don't really think that we have seen since then. I think the death of the studio system lit a fire, and then those filmmakers made money, and then they got money, and then what they made was quite different. But there was a time period in the 70s where I think that independent cinema has never seen such glory.
I agree with that. And for me, I was in Boston in the 70s as a theater manager and a programmer. And it really was incredibly exciting. And something to remember about the 70s that a lot of folks don't realize is there was no VHS. VHS didn't start until 78 or 79. Mm-hmm. There was no DVD. There was no Blu-ray. There was none of that. So for you to see some of these great films, you had to go to the movie theater. And each movie theater, especially in Boston, had its own community of people that loved it. There was the Orson Welles, there was the Coolidge Corner, there was the Brattle, there was the Kenmore, there was the Park Square, which I ran. There were just all these great theaters, and talking about the films and seeing the filmmakers and seeing these independent filmmakers starting to emerge and finding that the technology to create film was becoming more and more accessible, made it great so that people could start telling their stories. I think the 70s are literally the linchpin of where we are now with the art of the visual images that we now enjoy. Mm-hmm. So that's it for the show. We thank everyone for joining. Hope, you have some big news.
I do.
Share big news.
Thank you very much, actually, for asking, Garen. I have a new novel out. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's called Killer Pictures. There it is. It's about movies that might kill you. So fits right in with what we talk about here on the show. It's actually sort of inspired. I am a juror for a film festival here in Columbus called Nightmares Film Festival. And one year, as I was scrolling through the queue, there was a movie named Adam, which is the name of one of the judges. And I thought, nutty. And I kept scrolling, and there was another movie named Jason, which is the guy who founded the festival's name was Jason. And I thought right at that second, if I see my name, which honestly, my name is a regular old word, so it could happen. If I see my name, I quit. I quit the festival. I'm not watching these movies. I'm out. And I thought, what am I afraid of? So I investigated that, and it turned into this book.
Wow. Well, I know that Mark, our director, just listened to the audio version of it and really loved it. And hopefully, I'm going on a family reunion soon. I'm going to pick it up, and I'll read it while I'm on my vacation. You're my vacation read.
Thank you so much.
David, besides being a wastrel, a bum, and what else are you doing these days?
Aaron, let's be honest. I've done nothing this summer. I have nothing to promote. I've done nothing. I want to buy Hope's book.
There you go.
You tell me, because you can please tell us the plot.
Sort of a recluse film festival judge who doesn't really have anything else going on. That's really all she does, and that's all she likes to do is watch all these films. She comes across a film in the queue named Adam, which is the name of one of the other judges, and she watches it and doesn't really understand it. But the next day, Adam, the judge, murders someone and kills himself, and she watches as the film disappears from the queue and is replaced by another film with the name of another one of the judges. So that starts her on her quest to figure out what is going on before her own name shows up there.
And where do we find this book, Hope?
It's everywhere. It's in bookstores. It's online at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and you can get that. My husband George does the audio book. He's in radio, so he did my first book too. I'm very lucky to have like a great voice for it. So you can get that anywhere you get books, I guess.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
So David, you have nothing to promote. So
at the Edgewood Studios store, edgewoodstudios.com, and if you give me a link, Hope, I will forward it to all of the Edgewood Studios fans.
Thank you. Wow.
This is what I like about the people that work with us. They're all so generous.
We're all schlepping something. You have to work together.
Anyways, that wraps up this show. Our next podcast is going to be on anime, which I'm looking forward to because I don't know a lot about anime, and that's going to be fun because you learn something with it. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, we ask people to go to our website, bostonsci-fi.com. We have tickets on sale for the SF51 Marathon and the SF51 Festival, which is in February of 2026. We are looking for new people to help us do this. We have a new executive festival director by the name of Melissa Starker, who's awesome. We love her. You guys know each other.
Melissa.
Everyone knows Melissa. She's awesome.
Fantastic.
And she's bringing a lot of new, great energy because I'm old and tired, as we've talked about. Of course, you can find this podcast just about everywhere. We'll have you up on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. We'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. And before I leave, I want to thank everybody involved in this, which is Mark Sherwood, our director, and Irene Late, who is our producer. These guys have done a great job, and I really, really thank them. So thank you, Hope. Thank you, David. And here is our closing banner, which is a trailer for our next segment on anime. Thank you very much for joining us at Boston Sci-Fi Podcast.
Thank you, Garen.